Good morning. Welcome back to Polymathematics. I'm Blake Zeeler, the relationship engineer. Today I'm going to be talking about boundaries, rules, and agreements in non-monogamy. In our current era, there's been a lot of importance and conversation given to boundaries, setting and exercising and holding healthy boundaries. And this comes up a great deal when we're talking about how to navigate polyamory. One partner says to another, like, I have a boundary about this. I'm not okay with you dating somebody who doesn't respect our relationship, or something like that. And we use the word boundary in that context as sort of a stamp of unviolatable approval, right? Like, if I have a boundary, you can't violate it. And that's all well and good. But that definition of boundaries, to me, is murky. I want to make a distinction between how I define boundaries, and indeed a lot of where I'm pulling this from, the book More Than Two, which I think is the best book out there on polyamory, and how boundaries might differ from agreements and rules. So let's go into it. A good working definition of a boundary is that boundaries apply to you and you only. I will not engage in a relationship with anyone who isn't already committed to polyamory, is a boundary. I won't have sex with anyone without barriers, is a boundary. They apply to your body, your emotions, your mind. And they might apply to how you engage with another person, but they're personal. So, an agreement between two partners, or more than two partners, is a boundary that applies to all parties involved. But everybody who the boundary applies to has agreed to it and said, yes, I choose the same boundary. For example, my partner and I have an agreement that we won't have barrierless sex with anyone else. That's an agreement that we have made around a particular boundary. Now, rules show up quite a bit in polyamory, and I see this a lot with the folks that I coach. And they get paraded like boundaries, and therefore not really open for discussion. A rule, in my definition, is a boundary or an agreement that has been made by one or two parties that applies to a third, or indeed many other parties, where the other parties didn't have a say in the creation of that rule. So, saying, for example, say you and your primary partner make an agreement that we won't date anybody, or we won't see any of our other partners more than once a week. Well, fine, you and your partner may have agreed on that. But once one of you has another partner, and you come to that other partner and say, hey, yeah, we can date, we can have fun, but I can't see you more than once a week, because that's a boundary that me and my partner have. Well, this new partner might agree to it at first because they want to date you, and they might just look at this as like the price of admission. But over time, that rule is going to eventually start to get pretty uncomfortable. And the reason that it's going to start to get uncomfortable is not really in the details of the rule itself. It gets uncomfortable because it's non-consensual. And this is the part in the conversation where a number of my clients get a little bit uncomfortable. But bear with me. If you are being told what to do by another person in any form, and you didn't get a say in that decision, then you did not consent to being under that rule. Now, you may have consented to adhering to it when you entered the relationship, and often this is what happens with new people who come into a constellation. But over time, again, the feeling of having not consented to that agreement tends to get uncomfortable. And it tends to get pretty uncomfortable for the person who's in the middle, the pivot in that situation, because naturally they're trying to make both partners happy. On the one side, they agreed to this particular rule, and on the other side, they have a partner who really wants to see them more than once a week. So what's the pivot to do? I don't have a short answer for that question. It's really complicated, and it's really uncomfortable. And it's uncomfortable, again, because it's non-consensual. So the most ethical thing that you can do in your poly constellation, or your polycule, polyfamily, whatever you want to call it, whenever you're making a decision about what the boundaries or limits of a particular relationship or relationships are going to be, the most ethical thing to do is to bring all parties who will be affected to the table. Even if someone in that situation is brand new to the family, bringing them to the table shows them we care about your individuality. We care about your consent. We care about your autonomy, your feelings, your needs, etc. And that will make all parties involved feel considered, heard, and valued. I'd love to hear what you think of this. Please put your responses in the comments, and I'll get back to you when I can. Thanks for watching.